10% hike is like a joke amongst everyone, right? Everybody thinks कि कर करके क्या ही मिलेगा, 10% मिलेगा. Even the most motivated employees, after a couple of appraisal cycles, start feeling, is it really worth the 3% more that I'm getting or the 5% more? अगर one of my colleagues get 5 and I get 10, the way I see it is still 5% more.
Look, there is a budget which is available, and all of us should understand that whatever is going to happen is going to happen within the budget. And look, for some people at times, they may be the rock stars in the organization. But I need to also go and make them understand that, listen, you've hit the ceiling. The teams will not come and ask you, why did you do this? While it's very good that a person should come and say, but listen, but I expected more. And as a leader, I should sit with my person and say, let's sit and carve out a career for yourself, which is about special projects, extra development, you moving in your career to the next level. And this is just one milestone of your career. You're looking at a 15%. Let's talk about how do you get a 50% year on year. But for that, you'll have to really disrupt yourself. You'll definitely have to learn a lot and upskill yourself and build a bigger complexity for yourself and win it.
Never before in the history of workforce have we seen so much change as we've seen since the pandemic. It started off with uncertainty in our jobs when the pandemic hit. It moved very quickly to work from home. Then we saw great resignation. Moonlighting was in the conversation. Should employees have dual employment? We also saw people choosing to be entrepreneurs, which went mainstream. So in the last 3 years, if you could see a trend of anything changing from the pandemic, anything that is here to stay, I think how we work in offices is one thing that is really taken the old normal out and we've brought a new normal. To discuss the future of the workforce, we have with us Mr. Anurag Bhartiya, career and life coach and a veteran from the human resource field. And we have Mr. Saurabh Singla, the Chief Human Resource Officer at upGrad. Saurabh, I want to start off with you. Firstly, welcome both to the podcast.
Thank you.
Our initiative here is to talk to industry experts from different domains, data science, AI, ML, all the fields that upGrad typically operates in. What we want from you is your perspective on where HR, your field, the field that you have spent so many years in, both of your veterans. If you could maybe give your opening notes on where do you see workforce development and in relation to that, the field of HR. So me as a non-HR person and my colleagues and my peers and whatnot, how do our jobs seem? Where are the trends going in the next 5 years? And basis that, how does the field of HR change? Saurabh, I just want to start off with you. If you could do like an opening note on where do you see the field of human resources in the next 5 years?
Fresh, very interesting topic. I have my own views, and if you ask me for many, I would say almost about 2 decades back when I opted for this field, a lot of people used to tell me, why are you getting into HR? This is transactional. If you want a cushy job, you take it. And I always believed that this is actually not HR exec or an HR operations. So the one word that defines it all is HR business partnering. So HR is no more about just the back end. And to me, in the next 5 years, how it has to get disrupted, and it is already being disrupted, the HR professionals anyways have to be a master of their subject, which is about hire to retire. But what the CEOs and the business leaders are expecting from HR now, you need to have a view into the business. You need to absolutely know how would you help me drive the revenue and the EBITDA. And at the same point of time, how would you shape up an organization of people which is going to be really partnering and not just being, I would even say, not even enabling or supporting. It has to be lead from the front. That's the biggest change I'm saying is coming and will come more and more.
That's very interesting because the brief job description that you gave does not sound like an HR person's job description at all.
It doesn't.
Like nobody, I think, has ever thought about EBITDA. I think if I can sort of summarize what you're saying, it is the shift is to not just look at employees as your team, as your workforce, as people that you've hired, but to truly look at them as resources and how can you maximize these resources, right? Like for example, technology. If I'm a techie and I'm working in an organization, all the tech knowledge that I have is geared towards getting outputs, business outcomes for the company. And this is true of most core sectors, most like marketing is supposed to do that. I have never heard that about HR, so it's very refreshing. I'll come back to what you said, but I also want, Anurag, your opening thoughts on where do you see the field of human resources and, of course, the sort of landscape of workforce. How do you see it changing in the next 5 years?
My view is that any profession or any professional has a T dimension to their work. What do I mean by T is that there is a deep verticalization which happens where you need to be a specialist, you need to know your job, you need to know what this is all about. So whether you are a doctor or a scientist or an engineer or for that matter an HR person, you got to know what HR really means. You got to know what your job is. And the upper part of the T is the generalization, the broad basing. And I completely agree with what you said, Saurabh, that the broad element is really about understanding what industry you are in, what is the organization all about, what really makes the organization earn its money, who are its customers, and all of that. So yes, I think the HR profession has some basics to it which will never change, and at the same time it has to also keep changing, as per the needs. So while I think it was Henry Ford who created the assembly line, and there was a introduction of mechanization into the way the industry is operated, and then with technology and all, we seem to be moving further and further away from the human element. But if you really see that the human element has really never gone anywhere, what it has really happened is it has got upgraded. So from being a machinist or being a person who is just working with hands, you are now asking the person to really apply the mind and the brain. And today, if I look into the future, if I dare peep into the future, it will not be just hands and the brain, but it will be the whole person. So how you bring your personality, how do you bring your talent and character to the workplace, and how you make an impact using your special skills is where you will be able to contribute. So it's a T, verticalization, specialization, but at the same time knowing what's happening around you and bringing your whole complete self to the workplace. That's my thought.
Very interesting. I want to come back to the T. I had also heard of this, T graph, maybe I think 6-7 months ago. So I want to come back to that.
Sure.
But Saurabh, I just want to pick up with you what you said about the role of an HR person changing from simply being the person who hires and the person who keeps everyone whatever, but to truly look at what do you think has changed and why do you think this definition of an HR person has changed? Like, what is there a larger trend that is happening in organizations, and which is why this is the case, or is it just more awareness? Is it more ambition on part of HR professionals that sort of led them to stand up and say that we are not just going to be a support department like it's typically called, but we are actively going to see how can we maximize human resource?
The world used to get disrupted earlier in about 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I think it's now getting disrupted every quarter or every biannual disruption is there. There are absolutely new types of businesses coming. There are new roles emerging. I mean, we used to talk about, let's say, an AI specialist. We never knew what AI specialist is. So there are as many new roles. The businesses are not as standard as they were. I mean, in my childhood, I saw my father going to a bank and it was a standard banking job. But now within the banking, there'll be like 10, 20 new type of roles coming. So the world is changing. So we haven't learned from what our parents taught us or what we saw for the first 20, 25, 30 years of our life. So the ability to understand the business is going to give any HR professional, and like Anurag said, for any professional for that matter, they would need to realize that, oh, this is the type of role and this is not a standard role that I ever thought about. And then from there, you would know that what should be the job description like. What should be a performance criteria for this person like. This role needs to get an incentive versus a variable or nothing. What is success meaning for an AI specialist or a coder, or I mean, within HR now we've got as many new roles. I mean, we've got definitely people who are communication specialists, but with social media and branding specialization. So it's a new role from marketing which has got rehashed into HR for a next level specialization. So you really need to understand, one, what your business really wants to achieve. Is it an online business? Is it an offline business? Is it still brick and mortar? Is it a blend? Is it absolutely disrupting something new? And when you understand your business well, is when you'll be able to stitch the right policies and processes for the company. So in the HR, in the organization, and like what Anurag said, the vertical point of T continues to stand as is, and that's important. But the information and the blend that comes into it is very different. I'll give you an example on a practical role of HR. An HR business partner, and we don't call them support function at all anymore. I mean, even at upGrad, we're very clear. At upGrad, we call them enabling functions, and we say you're enablers of business. Now, if you want to be an enabler of the business and it is about a role of HR business partnering, my HR business partner who sits in a factory needs to understand the complexities of a factory, the risks attached to that factory, the kind of people who can come and who can be really sharpshooters in their roles, and what is the outcome that you want in a factory. But the moment I take this to a, let's say, a development center or a tech and product center, it's going to be a very different environment. I can't go and tell those people, listen, you come at 9:30, otherwise half day is cut. Why? Because the talent is very different. The business need is about an outcome which is not dependent on a relay that's moving, it's creativity. The third example is I go and sit in my marketing department, and in my marketing department, there is a social media cell, and there is a creative cell, and then there is a cell which is going to do production. Actually, all these three are very different as well. Now, if my HR business partner does not understand the business line, and I'm just talking sub functions, you go to different industries, the way it will operate in a factory versus a startup, versus a logistics, versus let's say a telecom, versus let's say a fashion brand, retail, online and offline both, is so different. And then when you talk to the business leader, you can't go and say that, listen, my policies are going to be a cookie cutter approach. My process and the way I will deal with my people is going to be a cookie cutter approach. So the whole personality and the way one is using the intellect changes. But the moment the person understands these things, by the way, the first biggest step of being a partner actually comes to life. I've just given an example on just looking at the smallest part of it. The next thing that I can tell you, which is changing dramatically now, we've got startups who want to create the fortune of the output. I'm not talking about the valuation and all. The fortune of output and creating the aha for the customers, you don't need 50 years for that now. You can't. You'll probably want to do it in 5 years or, I mean, at upGrad, we are less than 10 years. But we are already making news, making waves, and we're moving to the right direction of making sure that the education and learning in the higher education space becomes so much more impactful, easily available at the right price point, and most impactful for the outcome of the learner. Now, if you want to just do that in less than 10 years, of course, you'll have to be really sharp in understanding your numbers as well. There is no choice, but as HR, if I don't know that X business needs to achieve a 2x growth, which means the hustle is going to be much more. Hence, the kind of people that I bring in, if they're coming and saying, listen, I need work-life balance, and I'll say, listen, I respect that and I definitely want it. But listen, 2x to 20x growth doesn't happen without a hustle. And you've chosen this hustle because you also want to grow as fast. Versus, let's say, another thing which is a standard business, which has reached its maturity. And all I need to do is to find out how do I make it better and better on quality and output. But it's not moving up in scale. There I don't need hustle. There I need people who'll sit and ideate a lot. Not meditate, but ideate a lot and kind of bring up new ideas. There I can't go and say, listen, let's just do this. There I have to say, listen, relax, sit, let's talk. I need more communication forums. Now this difference, unless the HR partner understands, I would put a cookie cutter approach, and maybe the person who has to think is on a floor of 500 people and can't think. And I may have people who have to do hustle. I tell them work from home. But listen, the hustle happens when 500 salespeople come together on one floor, and when the bell rings with every sale, they say, listen, we are all rocking. But these are basics. The CEOs and the business leaders expect HR to think beyond and come and really make the difference. So I believe it's changing. It's really changing.
I just want to pick up on what you said about having the or not having the cookie cutter approach. And you sort of, hit it on the head when you said that somebody, I'm just taking the example that you gave of my team, which is creative and content marketing. The production person sitting right here is very different from the social media person who's going to upload this podcast eventually on social media. Their roles are different, their working styles are different. Production people probably also need to work on the weekends. Social media person needs to be live at 9 p.m. also if something is going live. So there are different, and it's a desk job versus whatever job. So not having a cookie cutter approach, great for employees like me. I love it. But can we expect then that what was typically done in appraisals, the most important point for an employee, right? Where there was a bell curve sort of a formula applied. 10% get, great hikes, 80% get okay hikes, and the remaining 10% don't get much. And I agree that most things in life can fit under the bell curve, not just appraisals, anything, sports people, anything, literally anything can fall under the bell curve. But employees like me, workforce, people in the workforce have probably, and the viewers watching here, have probably always felt a little unfair that eventually they're force fitted in a bell curve. And clearly that has worked for companies, right? If I were to put myself in an entrepreneur's shoes or in the, the company owners, the CEO's shoes, makes sense. How does the company continue not having a cookie cutter approach, which is great for the employees, but also ensure that you're not overpaying talent or this is not a norm? So how do you ensure that? First with Anurag and then to you.
I think that's a great question you have asked, Shreyas. My view is that there are some realities you cannot do away with. So, for example, there is a reality that the organization will create a certain output at the end of the year. The reality is that there will be a set of people whom it has to distribute the, the value it has created. And there is also a reality that you can't do it in a cookie cutter manner the way you absolutely well explained. So, there has to be some science, some logic to it, and bell curve has met that need over the decades. Until something else comes up, maybe it's going to stay in some shape and form. My feeling is that a better way to deal with this, and that's what I learned in my career, is that rather than focus on, isme se meko kya milega, what will be the reward that I will get, I think it's better to think about how do I create more value. What is that is being expected and how can I exceed that, or really go deep in and understand what the role is and how do I really expand on that role. And what happens is that when you do that, the organization notices, the people around you notice. You become a very invaluable kind of a person whom the organization will want to retain and everyone will want to work with. Every function will say, "Yaar, he's the person you should go to." Now, when you do that, it doesn't matter how the bell curve is structured. The point is you will be, looked out for in the organization. And I think that's the biggest reward that you can have.
So you're saying no respite then for people like me who will still be slotted in that somewhere in the 10 or the 80 or the bottom 10?
Sorry to interrupt you. Actually, folks like you who are very creative and who are very skilled, you have nothing to worry. You cannot be replaced. The kind of experience, exposure, the way you will convert the product into a very fine product at the end of the shoot and all, that cannot be, taken away from you, and that value is inherent in you. So, irrespective of if I was the HR head for your organization and if you were doing an extremely good job, there is no way I would, do something that will take you away from the organization. So, whether it is the monetary awards or whether it is recognition, whether it is growth in the organization, whether it is giving you the best of the projects, there are so many ways the bell curve can be really compensated for, and I think you will find that. So, respite on maybe money side to some extent, yes, it might not meet your full expectations, but on the other pieces which will really create your career for the next 10 years, 15 years, which is what the topic is about, I think it's going to be a wide open field for people like you.
Sorry, I should have said this context before. I'm here as the voice of the learner or the consumer. Okay? So I will ask some of these difficult questions very directly. Because 10% hike is like a joke amongst everyone, right? Everybody thinks ki kar ke kya hi milega, 10% milega. And yes, as someone who's been working now in certain positions, I understand, at least now I've started seeing both sides of the argument, right? But there has got to be something that can be done to break this thing where even the most motivated employees, after a couple of appraisal cycles, start feeling, is it really worth me working maybe 30%, 40% better than my peers? Is it really worth the 3% more that I'm getting or the 5% more? Agar, one of my colleagues get 5 and I get 10, the way I see it is still 5% more. I worked so much harder than my peers, and what did I get is 5%. So Saurabh, since you said ki bell curve, shayad, you didn't say it, but I'm going to put those words in your mouth. You said something about the bell curve going away and not having a cookie cutter approach. How do you see that happening, in the future, specifically when it comes to employee reviews and appraisals?
I don't know bell curve even today, by the way. And I'll tell you a very different approach, and that's what I truly believe in, even in upGrad. I mean, that's what we kind of do. So number one, I'll just differentiate and put this performance appraisal exercise into two different parts. One clear part is about the feedback and creating the clear understanding, did I do so well, did I do well, was I lousy, can I improve on something? So the performance feedback is one very, very important part of it. The other part of it is of course the financials, right?
Correct.
And of course the benefits and everything, it's a larger bucket, like Anurag rightly said, that it's not just about the financials, but financials will also include what are the benefits, is there a grade change, is there a special project, but end of the day we hire commercial employees, and my commercial employees very clearly, they need to have growth on financials, there is zero doubt about it. So here is the way I look at it. The first part is, for a business, and unless we are in a not-for-profit business, a business needs to generate profit, right? Now hence there is a AOP, annual operating plan. Now the business leader needs to know what is that amount that I can increase on the payroll section of the AOP. Now, can you bring me a 10% average? Can you bring me a 20% average? Can you bring me a 30% average? As HR, I am very happy to consume as much more as it comes. So the first thing, an HR partner today has to think about and work with the business to find out what's that number that comes out. Now let's say on a payroll of $1,000, I can pay $100. Now it's $100. Now the way I distribute it is a choice, but it's going to be a combination of whether I apply bell curve, whether I disproportionately give money to some and proportionately give it to some others. But I just have $100, by the way. So the first thing that I tell my business leader, listen, you've got $100. Gone are the days of talking about bell curve, because earlier there was not a AOP concept or a business leader owning their own numbers absolutely clearly. So it's your business, you're the full owner. As HR, I'm going to enable you. This is $100. Now let's find out that who are the people who are absolutely standing out. Forget the bell curve, because I think for many, many decades, while bell curve is a brilliant, brilliant way of standardized roles being evaluated within an organization, these startups and all these new age companies with so many differentiated roles, where frankly every function is very, very critical, because the kind of speed we are driving, the kind of outcomes we are driving, every function becomes very, very important. The value add of certain roles is going to be in multiplier format, some in addition format, some in a standard format. So the question right now is bell curve or no bell curve. The first thing is you've got $100. Number two is you will do the spread of that money amongst all employees in whatever proportionate or disproportionate way. The biggest need of this whole process, are you transparent with your employees? Don't go and tell them, don't go and tell them that, listen, I have a bell curve, I have this and that. Employees not ready to listen to all of that. But if you make your employees a partner of the organization and say, listen, this is the AOP that we have. We were supposed to achieve $1 million worth of revenue, and we needed a $10,000 of EBITDA. But listen, we've underachieved. And because we've underachieved and all of us are together into it, and collectively, while individually you might have done very well, but look, collectively we haven't achieved it. At the same time, it can be the other side as well, that we are overachieving the revenue and the EBITDA, and this is a team which has done it so well. Hence, not looking at an average increase, we are actually upping the game, and there's going to be a different average, but there is a budget which is available, and all of us should understand that whatever is going to happen within the budget. And look,
for some people at times, they may be the rock stars in the organization. But I need to also go and make them understand that, listen, you've hit the ceiling. And that's where the bell curve, not just the bell curve, but the compa ratio will also come.
Yeah.
For an HR professional, so important that you understand the business. Again, I'm repeating, and it's just coming to this example. You need to understand the financials, which is about the AOP, EBITDA, and your payroll budget. Number 3, you need to understand the insights of employees, not treat them like a standard role, but every individual deserves to know why about it. Of course, I need to still keep the confidentiality. I can't open up the budget in front of the entire teams, but I owe them an explanation of what are we doing and why. If that dialogue happens in a proper communication and a proper way in the starting, and then there is a result coming at the end. I mean, I've done this in past many times as well. The teams will not come and ask you, why did you do this? While it's very good that a person should come and say, but listen, but I expected more. And as a leader, I should sit with my person and say, let's sit and carve out a career for yourself, which is about special projects, extra development, you moving in your career to the next level. And this is just one milestone of your career. You're looking at a 15%. Let's talk about how do you get a 50% year on year. But for that, you'll have to really disrupt yourself. You'll definitely have to learn a lot. And the upgrad Aage ki Socho is not just about Aage ki Socho, but Aage ke liye sochne ke liye kuch padho and upskill yourself and build a bigger complexity for yourself and win it.
I just want to say something here. Our lifespans are increasing, and our working periods are also increasing. In fact, there is a concept now of why do you need to retire? Earlier, people used to say, I would like to retire at 45. And the question is, what would you do after 45? So, with the increasing lifespan and the quality of life, people want to be engaged and be productive. So, imagine if you're really thinking Aage ki, then you would say, what is that I can do in which I am engaged for the rest of my life? And it doesn't look like work. Now, if you have that thinking, what happens is, and this is extremely important for the new generation, that you have to think not like 100 meters runner, but you have to think of being a marathon, which means you need to move from short-term orientation to a very long-term orientation. Now, what happens in that kind of an orientation, my feeling is, and Saurabh will have that same experience, is that when you think long-term in decades, you start thinking not only in terms of monetary, but you start thinking in terms of skills, the value you create, what is your positioning, where do you see yourself in future, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from down. And it need not be just be a corporate experience, you could be an entrepreneur, solopreneur, you could be doing so many things. So, I think your orientation is extremely important for you to understand where does this bell curve fit into my larger scheme of things. And the second piece I want to say is, when you understand numbers, you start seeing the magic of compounding. So, जो आपने बोला कि I work extremely hard and I'm a performer and I get 10% or 12%, and someone whose average gets maybe only a few digits lesser. But if you compound this, and that will only happen if you have a long-term orientation, then what happens is 4 years, 5 years from now, that small gap starts increasing.
Yeah, that's
not
true.
only in terms of the annual pay and the increment, but your bonuses, but also your career growth. And over a period of time, you start seeing which horse is really running for the short game and which is running for the long run. Now, we are not horses, we are people who are extremely creative, very intelligent, and you can imagine if with that orientation you will start playing the game, your game properly, you can go far ahead.
True.
So
That's very
that's
true. So, we had done this survey, right, like an independent survey where we interviewed some 700, 800 people across India. And वहाँ पे पता चला that on an average, people who upskill, I think the number was 1.5x. They get an appraisal of 1.5x more than people who don't upskill. And this is not just upgrad numbers, right? These are, you could have read a book, you could have learnt it on YouTube. But in general, people who learn something new. So we thought कि चलो 15%, let's say 1.10% का 15% हो गया. Then we compounded this, we did that same exercise. And the eventual, at the end of 35, 40 years, I think the difference was in crores. In crores. Somebody who upskills and somebody who doesn't upskill. So I get that about the compounding factor. I also want to talk about what you said, right? Right now, I feel that there are other ways of motivating people also. You spoke about seeing the longer picture, thinking about not just what happens this year in this year's appraisal, but to look at the longer picture. I think that's one change that has come from the pandemic also. Not just in long-term career planning, but to see the larger picture in how does my career also fit with my life. Like I read this beautiful quote that said, I don't want to reach a place where I have worked hard and become very successful, but I don't have anybody to share that success with.
Brilliant.
Right? So like it's people, I think, have found a new awareness about work-life balance as well. Right? They have understood that if I also want to be successful, I got to take care of my health. I need to spend some time being healthy. I need to take out that 1 hour instead of working a little harder. I need to take that 1 hour out for my health so that I can push my working age, my peak years, maybe by 5 years. And that is going to be much, much more compounding than that 1 hour additional that you worked. So I want to take the discussion to that now. People, employees in general, have taken a step back during the pandemic. And now when we think about our future, we don't just think about where is my career going, but where is my life going and where is my career leading my life. I think the best example of that is the ask for hybrid working conditions, the ask for work from home. A lot of businesses have moved completely from home. I know I use work from home as a reward system for my team. अच्छे से काम किया, बहुत अच्छा हुआ, चलो 2 दिन काम कर लो घर से, it's fine. I also use, earlier I used to use it as a punishment system also. Oh, you're not doing your work, whenever your output is reduced, please come to office. So different people, different managers have used work from home and hybrid in their own ways. Some have used it as organizational practice. Do you see this trend of work from home and hybrid, wherein people are questioning, why do I need to travel 1 hour and go and sit in front of a computer and then talk to teams in Bangalore, in Delhi, and Bombay, and probably 3 people in my office, because that is the structure of organizations now. Your views on where does work from home and hybrid, is it here to stay? Is it going to change even further in the future? Or is it just a trend that will probably decline in 5 years? Starting with you, Saurabh.
Very interesting topic, and I've always had my views on this thing, but depends on industry. If your industry is such where, so work from home and hybrid came in because there was a possibility in few industries that they will still survive and service their customer without jeopardizing a single inch on the customer success. And that's fine. But there were industries which were forced to work from home, but their outputs fell during the pandemic times. So I would first of all say, being a true business partner, I would say the first thing to think about is in your industry and in your department and in your role, if you can move even that customer success by 1 inch by being in office, please just absolutely be in office, because that 1 inch or that 1 point on customer success or customer NPS, as we say, is very, very important. But at the same point of time, use it also as a flexibility to make sure that people are able to balance their work and life. There are times when probably somebody is not well, but the person really wants to work. Of course, absolutely. There are times when you can use it as reward. A great example, I would say, Shreyas. And there are times when you actually can give space to people to say, listen, you think more. Don't be surrounded by the hustle. But then there are roles which really need the hustle and really need to be in office. So these are judgments that you have to create. So I can't put a standard answer to it, but I would say if it's in line with your business and if it's in line with your customer success, use the judgment. Don't use it to cut cost of an office. Don't use it to woo your employees into a work from home or a hybrid, because look, that's going to be short term. If you can't sustain it, then you're making a false promise.
True.
The last thing I would ever allow anyone to do is to make a false promise to my employee, because I really care for them. And at the same point of time, leave it to the managers and the HODs and the function heads and the business heads. It's their business, it's their function. Don't breathe down their neck, but tell them that, listen, if it works for you and if it's sustainable, let's sit and talk. And of course, it has to be in line with the organization philosophy as well. A lot of companies, I mean tech sector, and I would not talk about tech companies, but some of my friends who are working in the tech sector, they were spoiled for work from home, and they felt and assumed this is how life is. But now all the companies are calling them back and they're saying, oh, they made false promises. And I said, but I was asking them, I said, but did they promise forever in life? And they said no. I said, so step back and kind of realize it wasn't sustainable, because the moonlighting happened, because various things happened which kind of created a threat. So I would leave it to the business, I would leave it to the organization philosophy and the role. If it really makes sense, bring them to office. If you think that they're better off back at home, well, absolutely.
Very interesting. So again, not a cookie cutter approach, but to take
It's a business decision, if you ask me. It's not an HR decision anymore. I do believe business leaders, to be successful, actually have to be people leaders, and hence I'm more enabler. I'm not the driver of HR anymore. It is a business head who owns and drives their decisions on people. But of course, as a specialist, as a HR business partner, I'm standing with them always. Of course, hire to retire, standard process, policies and everything, that I will continue to do. But I do believe, from my thinking of Aage ki Socho, the future is not about transactions of HR, because transactions will fast diminish into automation. I do write my employee announcements using ChatGPT. Why not? It just makes my life so much more easier. But the inputs that I move in there, that's the key. So if I understand the business, I understand my people, I'll give the right inputs and ChatGPT will give it to me. So future transactions will keep fading away. If you're a true person who understands the business, if you're a person who understands the insights of people, of course HR always has to understand the behavior and competencies and skills and the dreams and vision of people as well. You bring it all together. It's like blend of offline and offline. This is a blend of the future of HR is about knowing your business and being a true business partner, knowing your employee and knowing them very, very well, bringing it together to make a lethal combination. And then whether it's a content person or a person standing at the door of a company doing a very important duty of a security guard as well, well, these are all roles that we need. We can't live without any one of them.
True. Yeah. I mean, you can't have a security guard working from home. Similarly, probably not some other role, but there are roles that also got it. I also want to pick up on what you said, because that, I think, in terms of human resource and workforce, that is the current mainstream conversation, AI. Currently, the way I see, the audience is split. Some people are embracing it, some people are absolutely, and I think this cycle is just so old. It happened during the industrial age. It happened during the digital age. It's happening again during the AI age. There is always a split panel on whether this new technology is good for us or bad for us. Should it be, will it replace human beings? Will it not replace human beings? Largely though, I think the narrative going around, this is my personal opinion. I think as a species, as a civilization, we have adopted AI quite well. People are using it as a tool the way it's supposed to be. People are not really afraid of it. Yes, there is some concern, there is some anxiety. But what is true is that AI is here to stay. It's not just human beings working anymore. The offices of the future are going to be me and my personal AI co-pilot working together. That is what trends say. In such a situation, do you see, and just a perspective, do you see AI also playing the role of an HR partner for me? And then where does that leave HR professionals?
No, that's a googly. I never thought of this kind of a question. Can AI be an HR business partner in an organization?
Of course, not to replace the current HR BPs, but to
augment them.
Yeah, correct. Let's say my HR BP can get her own avatar in an app that's in my ear, so I can just go, Nikita, can you help me with this?
You must have noticed, and this happened in the last couple of years. You call up any organization, for some customer help and all, and you will get into this automated calling, and there is a lesser choice given, but still there is a choice between talking to an individual, a human being on the other side, versus going through. Now, depending on the kind of complexity of the task you have, you take a call whether I want to talk to a person or I will go through the the guidelines of dialing those numbers and all. But you would have noticed that you somehow prefer talking to a human being because that person is able to understand, and sometimes you're not able to express your issue, concern, especially after a certain age, and you would need someone to help you out, right? My feeling is that in the organizations also, all employees want someone to talk to, right? We used to have these bots. So a lot of times when you get a response to your email or a WhatsApp, you don't know whether a human being has responded or some automated
Right.
software is responding to it. But you would want to talk to someone. You would want to interact with someone. You want someone to understand you, understand your feelings, and show that concern. And it's not only about you. You also want to engage with the face of the organization. So my feeling is that the human element is not going anywhere. Will the AI come in? Yes, it will come in, especially where stuff is repetitive, which can be automated, which is low cost value addition stuff happening. I think there AI will happen. So changes will happen, definitely. There's no denying that, and one should welcome those rather than resist, because then it gets even more tougher.
Correct.
But my feeling is the human element is not going to go away. I also just want to, interestingly, connect the last few questions you've asked. So, for example, you asked this question: where does a bell curve fit in? Where does hybrid working fit in? Where does AI fit in? And the question is under a larger umbrella of saying Aage ki socho. So here's a thought which is just I just want to put. You can have a circle of control and a circle of influence. हमने सुना हुआ है. So if the circle of control is you and who you are, and you understand yourself and you believe in yourself, then all these other things are around it. But if the center is, what will the bell curve look like? What will happen to the hybrid? And you can have these combinations. With the AI coming, the hybrid will go up or go down. I mean, you can have all kinds of, a very normal human being can get completely lost. And these changes cannot be stopped. कुछ ना कुछ तो चलते ही रहेगा life में, right? So this whole thing is about, at the end of the day, have confidence in yourself, know who you are, do those things that are value adding. People can see that you feel fun in doing that. And with that, then whatever is happening, you surf that, the waves. So it's like you're on a beach, the waves are coming. Now you can either not go into the water saying कि यार ये अब कौन सी wave आने वाली है, and you can keep being frightened, and then you wonder after 30 years what is life all about. Or you can say those waves will come, let's surf those waves, and I have confidence in that because I have upgraded myself, I have learned, and I enjoy what I do, and then things will happen. So all these questions, if I were to just step back, one way to respond to these questions is to say that, look, all this will happen. 1 year from now, the set of questions might change again. But the point is, if you have an understanding of yourself, if you are aware, then it's very unlikely that all these things will really impact you in a very negative way.
So basically you're saying, to ensure that we're not lost, keep yourself as the North Star,
Yes.
as the compass. Very interesting. Saurabh, your take on how does AI fit into human resource? Because I think the way I see it, they are diametrically opposite. Artificial intelligence, human resource, right? So very different, probably two ends of the extreme. Where do you see the HR industry with the advent of AI?
Yeah. Very interesting question, and I'll just pick up from where Anurag left. I'm with him completely on the fact that this is going to be a blend. So you need humans and you need AI, and it's not going to be either or, because I'm not going to fly a pilotless plane without passengers, right? I'm not going to write content from AI, but there's nobody to read. So it's all for humans, because this is us creating this whole new world, which is going to be bigger, better, more powerful, but also more friendly in the outcomes that kind of come in. So with all of that, the question of, is HR going to embrace AI? Well, it's already doing it, by the way, but we're not realizing it fully. There are already as many tools that we're using, which is using AI. When I've recently signed up for Amber, and it's going to go live this calendar year for us. Amber has a built-in AI-based chatbot, which is going to help my employees do a lot more self-service on not just about basics thing of, I need my pay slip, okay, can you make a letter like this? And you don't have to wait for HR person to come in at 9:30 a.m. in the office. Talk to the bot at 12 in the night, get it serviced, because that's what you need today. My employee does not want to learn only in the classroom, hence the online training classes. Hence the classes which is about async content which is there. My employee doesn't want to come to a desk and say, can I get this pay slip? They need self-service. My employee definitely does not want to also come and ask about policy clarifications every time on a desk. My AI powered tool can actually clarify policies in the way the employee needs it.
Wow.
Now let's say, can I replace the humane angle or the human angle with an AI tool? No, that's not going to replace, because if I replace everything, then there is no human resource department. Then there is a gadget, there is a bot, and you're actually self-servicing. But yes, a lot of transactions should move away, because अगर मैं आगे की सोचता हूँ तो मुझे HR की टीम ऐसी चाहिए जो मुझे insights बताए, business outcomes बताए, and becomes the most impactful partner rather than doing transactions. But at the same time, AI is here to stay, humans are here to stay. Artificial intelligence is still not a problem or a threat. Yeah, when the artificial thinking comes to life, that's when we all have a problem. But I think that's going to be an interesting change as well. It will come one day. One thing that I would definitely advise everyone to think of is, we need a much more open mindset towards technology, and I think that's one training or that's one strategic learning that every organization should create. But that also depends if you have a business need. If you're not in a business where you need to disrupt so much, don't invest on a wrong skill. It won't help you.
In fact, I'll just pick one thing from where Saurabh left. The challenge is not the increasing use of AI. The challenge is in the decreasing use of II. Now, what is II? II is, for me, is internal intelligence. If the problem with all this automation, for example, smartphones, internet, AI, is that today even simple calculations we are not able to do without a calculator. If I had to go from place A to B without GPS, I am not able to do that. In fact, there was a study done that one of the big reasons for dementia, increasing dementia, is the lack of being able to find places on your own. So, if these tools start replacing my basic faculties, for example, the ability to think insightfully, as he said, critically, then what happens is AI is something you have to be very frightened of, because it will start thinking on your behalf. But if I am continuously learning, if I am continuously sharpening my thinking, irrespective of whether I am at the junior most level or the senior most level in the organization, AI will not be able to replace you. So my point is again in the center of control, it is your intelligence, who you are, that matters. And if you keep sharpening it, you don't need to worry.
Do you feel, I just want to now move from AI to another sort of normal from the pandemic that we are taking forward. And again, I'm the voice of the consumer, so I'll ask you some tough questions. Moonlighting. Many people have spoken about it. I'm sure you know what most employees think about it, but I'll just sort of rephrase the most popular narrative going on. अगर एक CEO, अगर एक managing director, अगर एक entrepreneur can sit on the board for 6 companies, if an entrepreneur can start 2 different companies, as long as there is full disclosure, why can an employee not also have 2 sources of income? I'll tell you a very personal example that happened to me. When I joined upGrad, there was some notice period that I had to serve previously, and upGrad was keen on getting me in quickly, which most companies do. The first question that is asked after or nearby confirmation, the first question is, Acha, how soon can you join? So I did some adjustments in my previous organization. So I had some leaves left which I adjusted, and then I got an early exit. But on paper, they still had to show. So my leaves got cut, but on paper I was getting paid till the 15th, let's say, and I joined upGrad on the 1st. And जो भी मैंने फॉर्म भरा उसमें पूछा था लास्ट डेट ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट इन द प्रीवियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, ऑल ऑफ दैट आई पुट इट 15th, बट माई जॉइनिंग डेट वाज 1st. सो इमीडिएटली इट गॉट फ्लैग टू ये, एंड फाइनेंस वाले ने मुझे बोला कि लिसन, आई एम फाइन विद इट, बट यू विल गेट इन ट्रबल विद द गवर्नमेंट बिकॉज ऑन योर PF there will be 2 entries. That's when I realized that even at forget the organization, even at a government level, we are not allowing people to have 2 sources of income. Even if there is full, मैंने तो पूरा disclosure किया था, but still I could have gotten into trouble. So your thoughts on let's not even call it moonlighting. Let's call it alternate income or revenue streams. A buzzword for businesses. We need to create alternate revenue streams. Do you think that with a work from home hybrid, with AI picking up a lot of your drab jobs, it is actually opening up opportunities for employees to have alternate work streams? Do you think there will come a time in the future where organizations will also agree that this is happening, acknowledge it, and sort of figure out along with their HR partners on how do we ensure that this happens, one, with full disclosure, so at least you know that your employee is not working for a comp? Or do you think that this is not in the future at all? You don't foresee this happening? I'll start with you, Anurag.
My view is employment contracts will go through a change. What shape, form and how fast, we don't know, but whether it's moonlighting, gig economy or all these things, I think all of that will change. Look at the larger picture. The country is talking of a massive expansion and growth. We are supposed to be in the Amrit Kal, and the economy is booming, and there will be a issue of supply and demand. So in some pockets there will be huge demand and less demand and huge supply, and somewhere we need to channelize the energies of the people in the proper way. So you have hundreds, thousands, millions of graduates who are coming out of colleges, right, every year, and they have their parents and they have spent a lot of precious money to get upgraded, and now what? Are they going to keep waiting and all? So they are not going to get jobs easily because there is a funnel at the end of the day. So what happens to them? On the other side, the organizations are not necessarily looking for full-time employment also from everyone. There will be some roles, I have a feeling, where you need a specialist for a particular project and that's good enough. You need a consultant and so on and so forth. So somewhere the two will come together in a healthy equation, and the structures and the systems and processes right from the governmental policies and income tax laws to local contracts, all of that I think will start taking shape. And in countries like ours, where everything is on a massive scale, my feeling is some of this will really play out. But also to the point that you said, if a CEO or an entrepreneur can be in multiple organizations, why can't an employee be? There's one difference. The CEO and the entrepreneur, the CEO is being called by the other organizations for his expertise or to be on the board. The entrepreneur is on his own and he can take the risk and he can start as many as he wants. That depends on his risk ability and how good is he and so on and so forth. But when there is an employee, if you are wearing an employee hat, the organization is wanting an employee, which means you want someone who is dedicated and completely focused on the task in hand, and the organization feels that the job is at least 8 hours worth of work in a day. Forget about, I'm not getting into what Narayan Murthy said about 70 hours a week and all that. But you need, the organization feels that it's a full complex job and you need a fully dedicated person. So there will be some roles which I don't think will allow for you to be able to double hat, and that will be true. So on the whole, I think it's a changing scenario, landscape. You will have different formats happening, and again I will say it is for the individual to really decide, do I want to super stretch or do I want to concentrate, and where is that I will get the best of give and get. You will have to talk, and even also in what stage of my career. If you are in the early stages of career, you might want to be focused in a particular organization, really learn the ropes of the place and then the job itself. But as you progress, after you have done say 2 decades of work and all that, and you have the expertise, maybe there will be many organizations looking for you, and you can think of that kind of a thing. So many questions, and I think answers are going to come up.
So I just want to clarify before Saurabh I move to you. I don't think even employees, right, I can't say for everyone, but most employees are aware that they have a duty towards the organization. So when we talk of moonlighting, I'm even personally, I am fully sure that if you're getting paid for 8 hours in those 5 days, you should not, ethically you should not pick up anything else because you're getting paid by someone else.
That's right.
But I think the conversation about moonlighting is what you do after 7 p.m, what you do on Saturday and Sunday. So with that in mind, and I think any behavior when shown by masses has to be acknowledged and normalized and then structured. So from that point of view, and especially because HR is going to be key in this, right? How do you manage employees who are not just your employees anymore? So in that manner, do you think you see any possibilities where companies will It could start with the first company that just wants to attract top talent. तो उन्होंने बोल दिया आप moonlight कर लो, कोई बात नहीं. Do you foresee this change coming in, especially with gig economy? We are also seeing that startups especially need to be nimble. They need to be fast. They need 1,000 people in this quarter and maybe not 1,000 people. And then there comes this whole conversation of layoffs and this and that. Why so much weightage and baggage to this? I feel that a more casual relationship will also ensure that companies are not blamed for layoffs, because it is a company truth that you need resources in phases and then you don't need them. And entrepreneurs get bajawed on social media and news. इसने इतना फायर किया, उसने उतना फायर किया. जरूरी नहीं है इतना इमोशन का, right? If we just sit down at the table and have a conversation about employment as we know it. So with that in mind, do you see anything coming up in the next 5 years?
It's certainly changing as a overall platform, and I'll just cut it into 2-3 pieces. One, what's the organization need? Two, what's the new generation need, the current generation, and Gen Z as we call, needs? It can be a financial need, it can be an emotional need, it can be a need to experiment so much more. And the third, what's the right way of this thing? So from an organization standpoint, and even before that, let me just clarify. Moonlighting is actually doing something beyond your acceptable contract of employment. So I'm going to go legal here and on the compliance way, because as a partner to the business, I'm going to keep my business compliant.
Correct.
There are different types of contracts that can be signed. This is important for both organization and employee to know. Number one, there is a full-time employment. A full-time employment very clearly says that if Shreyas is my employee, Shreyas will not undertake any other activity of interest or of need with any other organization for a financial interest. That's number one. However, I have another type of contract, fixed term contract. Till this date, Shreyas is going to be my employee, and Shreyas cannot till this date take up anything of interest, of financial or the emotional interest or a professional upgrade. 3, I have a part-time employment model where I'm saying, listen, I'm only going to employ you for this amount of work, either by service contract of an output on a work or of hours that I need, and I'm only contracting you for lesser than what you are capable of. Hence, you're allowed to do something else. While in the contract I may say, if you're working with A type of an industry and I don't want you to work in other job of A type because it can be competition, that's the only rider, otherwise it's fine. Then the fourth type, which is coming up, and I've been an absolute solid proponent and an advocator of this gig economy for past many years. And I come from Ecom Express where I was employed earlier. We moved that organization from 100% full-time employment to now about 45 to 55% gig.
Wow.
At a massive 65,000 employee scale, by the way. It's possible, but the fourth one is the gig economy and a job which pays you by a particular output, which is a smaller window output. Right. You deliver a packet and I pay you as many rupees. You deliver a content and you take this money. You deliver a production set like this and I pay you this money. I'm setting up trade fair, come in, do your work, that's a gig, go out. Today there is an anchoring opportunity, come, anchor, go back. All of this is a very different contract of service employment. Will this happen? This is already happening. Can we stop this? No, we should not stop this, because look, this world is transforming so much. Everyone has their own ways of working and the amount of time they want to devote. I'm not sure if I'll work till 60. I'm very clear personally. I want to probably retire at a 50, and after that I want to pick up gig for sure. Why? Because I would like to do assignments when I want and what type of the assignments I want. And I may not just want to do HR. I probably want to go to a McDonald's or a KFC someday and say, listen, I want to be the person who's making Zinger burger or a Mac burger as well. That's going to be my choice. But at the same time, an employee needs to understand all these contracts very well. You picked up a full-time employment being in tech, and then you picked up another additional assignment. This is moonlighting, this is not gig. You should go back and say, listen, I don't want to be a full-time employee. I would rather want to do a gig work with you.
But our company is open to that.
Well,
and
from a
are employees aware that this option exists?
Now, I'll come on to the organization side from a different angle. What is it that I'm into? My organization job and an output that I'm promising to a customer. Is the transaction so simple and process driven that I can train 10,000 people or many people who are in supply? Example is logistics. I am taking a packet. I need to know I collect a packet from X place, pick up the packet in as much time I will deliver it to Y place. I'll pick up the cash or it's an online payment and the transaction is done. I need to be respectful, smile, etc., and it's done.
Correct.
Now this job is possible. Now tell me, if I want to put the operations head or the COO of a logistics company on a gig. So this month Mr. X will come and plan for the organization. Next month Mr. Y will come. The whole organization can go for a toss, by the way. If it's about a brand marketing, do you really think I can change my brand market owner or the leader of the organization? Because otherwise my brand will talk 10 languages in 10 months.
True.
So it's about the role. Organizations need to very clearly understand the gig is the future where there is no doubt. And by the way, at upGrad we have so many content creators and content team which is on gig.
True.
And we love them. We absolutely love them. They can work from anywhere. They create the best quality content for us globally. And then there is another team which brings it in together, stitches it into a story, into a program, and then does the delivery. But the delivery team, I would need them to be as much with me because I have a promise to my learner of a consistent experience. So if it's about your customer experience or the output, as far as that's not getting jeopardized, absolutely. If it's getting jeopardized today, please start thinking how can you simplify it so much that in future the same job can be done by gig as well. So moonlighting, I have a big problem with that because that's illegal and that's unethical.
Unethical, correct.
Do a gig, we all love it, but organization needs to decide how much of gig. A software in writing, you can't change the coder every day. And that's the problem with the tech industry that happened. Yes, after 7 o'clock I can do something. Well, absolutely. Go back to your organization and ask, are you okay if I do this additionally? Not the right time, by the way. This is performance appraisal time. Don't do that. The company will say, oh, the increment you take it from the gig and salary you take it from here. But on a serious note, I think you need to understand in your job what is it that you've promised as an outcome. Without compromise, if you're able to do more, would you not think of doing more and bringing more output in the same organization? And I'm not talking as a CHRO, but I'm actually talking as an employee that if I can do more and more and more, then why don't I invest it in my current organization, bring a better output, and then I'm not into that bell curve and anything at all. Then I'm in the top couple of percentages only because I'm driving a very different output for the organization.
From how an HR person would evaluate it, on the face of it, it feels like gig is very similar to vendor management. Would a person in a gig economy come under HR or would it come under vendor management? Because you're paying me for a deliverable. That's vendors, right? Do you still have to bother about employee satisfaction, even if it's a gig? Let's not even call it an employee. Let's call it gigger satisfaction. Do you think that would be part of HR scope or would it be vendor management?
It's a business scope. There's no HR or operations for me in my mind. It's a much bigger need to look at the onboarding of that person because it's going to be a shorter time and so many new people coming in every time. It is so important that you fill the person with the pride that, listen, I need to do the best for this organization and the outcome. And it is so important that you talk about the experience because look, even in gig, you don't want to keep replacing the person. You want a set of people to come back to you again and again and again and deliver this service or the product, because if that doesn't happen, Shreyas, the trouble is you're going to be in a different level of frustration of training so many people yet not getting the
I was actually
output.
going to come to that. How do you ensure a lot of things that employee management mein hota hai, training, satisfaction, how do you map their careers? How do you map their growth in a gig economy? Because you don't know what else they're doing.
There's no growth or career. I mean, career is going to be so individualistic here, and I think the organization, and Anurag can add, but organization may find it difficult to do it for that large set. But look, their onboarding, their training, their ESAT trainings for doing that job better and also evolving them to be better human beings and professionals, all that is important for sure.
But won't the organization see it? Like I'm now thinking, if it were my company, okay, there is a resource who's coming for 4 hours, doing their job, and then I know for a fact that that person is also going and doing something for other companies. Now, if I spend some money training this person, earlier with full-time employment, I know that only I'm going to get the benefit of that. Now I know that this training that I invest in this 4-hour gig economy person, that the benefit of that training is also going to be gotten by some other company.
And that's fine. And that's absolutely fine, by the way. And I've operated these models. But you have to make sure the professional becomes so confident that for those 4 hours, the person is delivering equivalent to 8 hours, by the way, in the output and the satisfaction. Two, these are shared resources. I mean, what would we do when we have to, do we think that I should not give the life insurance or an insurance to this person because it's a gig? No, it's then 24 hours responsibility cover, because there is no model as of now with the social security network that I can have a shared PA for a shared ESI.
Right.
And I think with the new wage code, let's see what the government has in plans, but we're really looking forward to it. But you have to just treat the person as if you own their basics and their safety and mental safety and their grooming as well. But of course, not with a mindset that tomorrow I should make them a full-time employee and bring, because then you're challenging your model. Your gig model should remain and people should really enjoy and make money and progress in their career within the gig.
Got it.
It's a choice they should make. Probably a Gen Z today wants to experiment with 10 type of roles. So they'll do gig, understand where I want to go, and then they'll say, now I'll think of my career. So unless a gig worker or a gig professional comes back to me and says, Sid and I want to do a career conversation, I'll say, absolutely, let's do that, because I don't want to differentiate between types of employment or service contract. And should HR own it? It should always be a co-ownership. People on service contract, unless it is such a transactional one that they don't want to get connected, HR definitely has a role to play, because this is an output of business that's going to come out.
I think this is going to be more and more important, because you mentioned Gen Zs, right? I'll tell you one very interesting observation somebody put a few days ago. Millennials used to be people, or are still people, who hate labels. Don't tag me in this category. I'm my own person. I can do anything and whatnot. Gen Z, if you go to their Instagram profiles, they will have labels. They will say, I'm a nature enthusiast, I'm a healthy eater, I'm a painter, I'm a writer, but I also cycle, I also go mountaineering. So Gen Z loves labels, and Gen Z does not want to be associated with just one thing. They don't want to tell people, oh, I'm a writer and that's what I do in my life. They want to be 10 different things. Now, in this situation, and we also know recently, TCS ka HR head, the CHRO of TCS, he was asked a question that TCS ka campus recruitment has always been 4 lakhs. And I remember it from my time back in 2008-9. TCS was one of the highest payers in campus with a 4 lakh package. It's still 4 lakhs. So he was asked this question, why has that amount not changed, like newer people coming into the industry? So he had obviously said that we pay almost double or triple also if you come with the right skills, right? So in this situation where companies are paying for better skilled freshers, I think that's a very nuanced term, better skilled freshers. You're expecting a fresher also to be skilled and to know beyond what your college has taught you. So in this situation, knowing that Gen Z is someone who loves different labels, who does not want to be associated as one kind of person or one profession, and knowing that they also need to know new skills, what do you think a fresher or somebody in their final year of graduation, who might also be our viewers, what do you think they should do to get their first gig or their first crack into their career? Because I'll tell you what I used to do, and I'm sure a lot of people have done that. Maybe you guys have also done it during your starting times. We used to write a lot of cold emails, cold phone calls. Maybe today, I don't know, people get into Instagram DMs and send a DM to, or they get into LinkedIn. But largely it is still cold. It's still cold calling. It's still cold reach outs. So in this situation where skills beyond your peers are important, and in this situation where you yourself probably don't know what you want to do in life, which is true for everyone and has always been true, but Gen Z comes with an attitude of, I don't want to get associated with just one thing. So in this sort of a situation, what would you advise to a fresher or a graduate or somebody in their final year of graduation? How do they approach their first break into their career?
So what I understand from your question is that while I'm a fresher, how do I differentiate myself?
Yes.
And that sounds like a contradiction, because all of us have gone through a standard course and thousands are coming out, and yet how do I differentiate? I think there are a couple of things that come to my mind. One is really be comfortable in your own skin. Don't try to be someone else. It will not work in life. Just be yourself, right? And be comfortable. The second is understand what is that combination of skills you have that creates a very unique skill set in you. So for example, if you are a person who can connect dots in a very unique way, and you can communicate in such a way that people say, wow, ये तो सोचा ही नहीं था यार, ये तुमने कैसे कर लिया श्रेयस? That is a very unique combination that exists in you, and which is, call it God-given, inherent, genetic, whatever it is, but it is like your fingerprint or your retina scan. You cannot, no one else can replicate it. In fact, you can't even explain how do you do it. So the second I would say is find out what are your core strength, like, which is beyond your academics and certifications and qualifications, because that is what differentiates you. And the third is find out how can you use your background and your skills to really create value for others. So be in this mode of contributing, collaborating, partnering, rather than expecting इससे मेरे को फायदा क्या होगा. Don't get yourself into a box and into a corner of saying, am I earning enough? When will I get that big car? Why is that person doing better than me? Don't worry. Be a long-term player and say, how can I really be a sponge and learn and contribute and partner with people and really understand what's going on. So when you do that, and suppose you approach someone, whether it is through a email or through an interview, your honesty, authenticity and your unique character will come across. You don't need to be, I don't need to be Saurabh. I can never be a Saurabh in my life. How can I replicate his entire background? If I was to try to be over smart than him right now, I can't be. He is he and I am, right? So, and the idea of both of us is there is because we both bring complementary, values and experiences and all. They're not completely 100% overlapping, they're not completely divergent, but there's an overlap, but complementary. So that's my point, that especially it doesn't matter which gen you are, know yourself, know what value qualities you bring and how you can add value. I think that's one great way of differentiating yourself naturally, effortlessly.
That's a very insightful point. It made me remember something I'd heard, right? One of my friends had said, like it's still stuck with me. He had said the point of school, he was talking about how he's homeschooling his child and whatnot. So he said, I realized one day that the point of school is not to make you capable. The point of school is to make you replaceable. It is giving you the same skills. It is ensuring that tomorrow if you are not there, somebody else from that same school can be put in your place. So what you said about having unique skills, using or tapping into your background to sort of bring out whatever your background is, your family, your culture, your financial background, the troubles, the experiences that you've had in life, and to bring that to your skill set, and that's when you can present something unique to the world. I think largely where India stands today, firstly I think we have to acknowledge that however, whatever my friend thought about school, where we are all across the world because of our education. I think that is undeniable, right? Our parents pushed us and pushed us and pushed us, and which is why you're seeing 35, 40-year-olds now who are just killing it all over the world, and I think education, goes a long way in that. And I'm sure you guys must have heard that the Prime Minister has said that he wants to make India the skill capital of the world. So I think we've unlocked the first phase of growth 20 years ago when we invested in education, right? But that was standardized education. Of course, people came from different backgrounds, they got in their own, unique talents, their perspectives, and they've reached wherever they've reached. Now, if I were to see the second phase of growth, has to come not from standardized education, but from unique, how to make people find their unique skill sets. So in that matter, in the next 5 years, or maybe you can also take it in the next 20 years, whatever your timeline of choice, what can India as a country and Indians as countrymen do to ensure that the platform that we've built, growth phase 1 that has been built, and which the effects of which you're just seeing now, right? CEOs in every company being of Indian origin. I would say that's still just phase 1 that was built 20 years ago. So today and for tomorrow, what should Indian professionals, Indian students, Indians in general, how should they approach education and skilling to ensure, and their parents of course who go a long way in it, but also working professionals who are upskilling for themselves, how should we approach skilling and education to take India to the next phase of growth, which we will probably see in the next decade? Saurabh, I'll start with you and then closing comments by Anurag.
Two things that come to my mind immediately, that if I had the drawing board and I would do this. One, I would say you have to be master of one specific thing that you are the best at as a professional, as a student, and because India will need a lot of specialization as well as we create this whole scale. We all can't be generalists. So definitely have a subject of your choice and be a master in it and go to the depth. The second thing, I think very critical for us to understand the last mile application, the practicality of it. The theoretical knowledge is not going to work. Theoretical knowledge won't work. So while I'm studying, can I also do some gig work? Can I go to a restaurant next door, or pick up an odd job and try to learn it? I remember when I was in my college, in fact in school time, I would go to my mama's place and I would sit on their shops and actually help them in that shop.
Yeah.
I think that was my gig. But what I realized was that I understood how to actually do the bargaining with a customer. So I could inculcate a marketeer or a salesperson inside me then. At the same time, I would also say we all need to also create that practical job knowledge in our education system somehow, that they need to understand that the campus to corporate is not a journey that corporate will teach them. If you could just fast track and bring it into the course curriculum somehow. And I'll give you an example. We've got upGrad campus, and with upGrad campus we actually provide programs and trainings and learnings to students who are in the last year of their studies. And for that 6 months to 1 year, we prepare them for job interviews and understanding what really happens in corporate. That gives them an edge, and those people can really crack the interviews well. They're already aware that a choice that they will make is not a maybe it will work. Yeah. But finesse, being a master of one thing at least, understanding the practicality and the last mile, I think is definitely needed for the country, because this growth is not stopping for sure. We are now in a phase where the developing nation has become a very fast developing nation, which means opportunities are going to be enough and more. But with the technology coming and disrupting us as well, if you're not the best, if you're not above average, you would find yourself getting replaced by a lot of AI and the machines in future as well. So we need finesse, we need last mile, we need absolute focus that I will make it happen. Lot to do with attitude.
Good. So very interesting. I think that last mile bit, right? I think my entire generation has complained about जो job में कर रहे वो college में तो सिखाया नहीं.
Yeah.
I think that is that last mile execution that needs to be fixed.
Well, I'll just take a minute more, and I'll tell you a real story that happened. So my nephew, his name is Nishu. Nishu was doing his engineering from NSUT in Delhi, and he was like, Mama, I have to get into a job after this. And I said, but which job, and are you sure what do you want to do? Because you'll do engineering, then you will go into coding. He said, no, I don't want to do coding. I want to do this and that. I said, but you don't know. Why don't you do some experiments? He did 3 trainings while there was just 1 required. He got into 3 trainings in the last 2 years of engineering. And one of that training was, by the way, in Pizza Hut at Connaught Place. And he worked in the back office along with those people to learn life skills. And he told me that after working there for a month, he understood that every job is so important. He had so much more respect. What I'm trying to say is that he learned life skills. And now when he goes and talks in any interview, people like, he's the guy we need, because he's not only thinking of a cushy job, but he's experimented with a lot and finally clear what he wants to do. So a lot more experimentation in the studies time, doing a couple of these odd jobs would at least make a person realize which job do I want to take.
Yeah. I mean, in college, we are all just eager to start earning anyway. So
it's
you know,
easy.
it's a very simple point, but it makes me think, why did I never think of this in college? Like, we all wanted to earn money in college, but we never thought, and we saw also, US में ना सब cool लोग हैं, college में जाते हैं तो job भी करते हैं. Nothing stopped us from becoming
Nothing stopped. We never did it.
Correct.
That's the only thing.
Anurag, your views on what Indians can do in the next?
I completely agree with what you said, especially the examples you gave. They're very practical and all. This reminds me of also my own. I did my hotel management and then I did my masters. And in hotel management, the college used to be there till 4 o'clock or so. And after that, you know, these 5-star hotels in Mumbai would have big functions, and you would go there and you would earn maybe 50 rupees or 100 rupees for 3 hours waiting. But in that process, you would learn so many things. And I think that stays with you. This last mile piece which Saurabh spoke of, I call it the knowledge for action. All the knowledge that is being acquired by us in the college and schools, we should ask, isse hoga kya? And you have to convert this into action, the application piece. And one good way of that is by interacting with people who are on the street, who are doing things on their own, you know, and engaging with them. I think that 1 hour interaction or 1 week interaction is equal to days and weeks and months of, you know, learning in the classroom. Both are important, but you need to transfer what is being learned in a confided place, and by from a teacher, you have to see how does it get, you know, applied. That's one thing I would say, application. The second I would say is that a lot depends on how you start seeing things. So let me give you an example. In this room right now, for example, there is a hard skill and there's a soft skill which is being applied. And all of us are applying both of them. So for example, the hard skill is the lighting, you know, the acoustics,
The cameras.
the camera, the sound systems, and I never realized that there is so much which goes into all of that. So there is a hard skill. You need to have technical skills to know this. I can't just, you know, come one day and say I'll do it. But along with that is also a soft skill. For example, how do you communicate the requirement to the customer? How do you see what is the best positioning that you learn through experience and all? So I would say it's a combination of hard and soft skills that will really help everyone. Here are 3 or 4 things which I can think of which are not being taught, but you read in bestsellers, you see through podcasts, you read, you know, you listen to people and you realize that. So one is, I would say, systems thinking. How do you, all our knowledge in education is reductionist. You break down ant into parts and then you break it down into organs and cells, and you know, learn everything into the minutiae. But that is reductionist. You need to be also able to then bring it all together and say, ki ye sab, when it all comes together, how does the whole system work? So in this podcast, you need 2 speakers, you need a, you know, a person who's going to make this happen, and you need the room and all. But how will this whole thing play out? And what should be the feeling that gets generated? What is the energy? And what is that we are trying to convey through this is the soft skill. Right, so that's one thing I would say is systems thinking, I feel, is important. Second, I would say is the ability to communicate, the art of communication. आप दुनिया के सबसे महान इंसान हो सकते हो, and you could be the best scientist, but if you're not able to communicate, what does it mean? You know, whether it is with your spouse or whether it is with your customer, you are not using your full potential. So the ability to communicate, and communicate in such a way that it answers the question, so what? Right, I think is the second piece that we need to learn. And maybe don't wait for someone to come and teach you. Observe people whom you admire. It could be Elon Musk, or it could be a Mr. Modi, or it could be the neighbor next door. It could be anyone, but learn to see how people communicate. The third is which Saurabh shared, that whether you are in HR or any other, it's analytics and number crunching. Learn the language of numbers. You know, for example, people will say India has maximum number of ABC, but in terms of percentage, right? So when you use numbers and you are able to articulate, what happens is people realize that you are not only a person who is broad based, but you can be very sharp and you can be very analytical. Right, so those are some things which I would say are extremely important, which somehow need to be brought into our curriculum. And don't wait for that. I would say learn it on your own. Find out through what's happening around you and learn it.
Very, very good points. I think one that stuck with me is, I'm just trying to recall how you put it. Knowledge without application.
Knowledge for action.
Knowledge without action is, I think, information. knowledge with application, that's education, correct? So that point I'll take home from this conversation. Thank you very much for being part of this podcast. I think we've covered a wide range of topics, and I hope that all the different things that we've covered right when we started, right, where are jobs going, how do the next phase of jobs, how are they to be looked at, what's AI going to do both for corporates. We've spoken about moonlighting, gig economy. We've spoken about how freshers can get into the industry. I think we have good material. So thank you so much for making it to the podcast, and we hope to see it live soon.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.